When I read my first book of Bhagwan Rajneesh Mohan, I lost some of my ability to articulate heavy ideas. I understood them, but my experience was limited to grasp the concept. When I read that femininity is an aspect of one's being only a handful of men were capable of enjoying, my mind went to an internal conflict of what I have been thinking all this time about being an influential man. The very concepts I have been thinking about were destroyed in a matter of seconds, just by a page of Bhagwan Rajneesh, just like Carlos Castaneda's story, which explains Tonal and Nagual. Something is out of my understanding, but it exists. But the moment I try to see or understand it, the more I pour my opinion on it. I haven't understood the concept fully then. So, how exactly am I supposed to experience all of this? With true incompleteness or by simply letting go and go into a state of dissociation where I am no longer defined by perimeters of what I have known my entire life. During the second year of my psychology degree, I understood that nothing is more fascinating than experimental psychology, which is a slightly advanced version of British psychology program's research methods. The more I read the theory books of any branch of psych, the more I knew the importance of experimental psychology. It completely challenged how I saw everything around me, made me a man who questioned a lot of things. And I continued to read everything I could get hold of. I was studious, and I personally talked to each professor and obtained their insight on how I should improve myself. And each one of them challenged some of my strongly held beliefs and got me to reorder how I have arranged my experiences. When Dr. Holden one day played a documentary of Dr. Walt Freeman and his lobotomies, I was, which now I understand, in a trance like state. And as I kept on walking down the sidewalk to my apartment after his class, the thought of myself in a similar intellectual sphere, that of my professor, was my only objective. Now you see, that's the teacher who really was able to have a significant influence on how I experience this world. Ever since this time, I have continued to push myself to gain more knowledge of measurements. Latent traits were in many ways a mystery to me, and I kept on exploring it until I found myself an answer. But concepts like statistical dimensions, multicollinearity, singularity were kind of difficult for me to understand just by reading about them. The factors of a multidimensional psychological construct kind of looks like the solar system. I visualize this in my mind's eye. The concept of dimension I have been struggling to understand soon made sense. I tried my best to explain the power of visualization to all my students, and of all, especially the universe, and how the fabric of space pretty much sums up all our understanding of experiences. But I failed. Each piece of information bends reality, just like mass bends space and time. The little enlightenment I had, I cannot share with anybody due to the limitations in my lexicon. Should I really try to explain this? If I do, then it becomes my personal perceptions of something I think is beyond my capacity to perceive. That makes my brief experience of enlightenment nothing close to enlightenment, very much like tonal and novel. When I talked to Dr. Howman, I told him how much I enjoy making papers and asking students. After careful observation of my statements, he looked at me in a puzzling way, shook his head in the usual fashion, and in the usual Michael Douglas fashion, he asked, "Who gave you the right?" I asked, "Gave the right to what?" He said, "Who gave you the right to decide what is best for students and what is not best for students?" I was confused at first, but soon I realized that his question made me realize something that I was not thinking about prior to this particular encounter. Most days when we meet, we talk about different things, and he would ask a simple question like this, which gets me to think of the bigger picture. I experience it, but I don't try to explain it here, because the moment I try to do it, I lose its value. When I first experienced love, the experience was twofold, of which the first is the non physical, platonic, where the presence is in the minds and the communication is primarily through eyes and other forms of non verbal communication. What I have gathered throughout my entire lifetime, interpreted what I was experiencing, which made me misread the signs of her, ultimately putting me down a road of misery. Had I known that my opinion or interpretations had limitations, I would have been cautious. But that never stopped me from experiencing the same misery again and again. The last time this happened, I was mentally shaken and could not explain what went through my mind. I felt extremely sad. Nothing helped. And to stop racing thoughts, I have nothing with me. I actually had nothing with me. And contemplating on the resentment that slowly eats me was another time that reordered my experiences to prepare me for the uncertainties and vicissitudes of living. Similar to those teachers who changed how I experienced this world, similar to those ladies who changed how I viewed intimacy and belongingness, right now is my time to teach students the importance of not trying to always seek answers for what is missing in the puzzle. The learning is sometimes to live fully knowing a piece is missing. This important lesson took me time to learn, and all this time I had it with me. And as I explain this to you, it is pretty much a subjective account of what I want you to be objective about. The client's story is important, and carefully waiting to understand their worldview about any explanation or rush for answers is also important. Yeah, the client's story is important, and carefully waiting to understand their worldview without any explanation or rush for answers is also important. Just like now, you have realized that this story is about therapy and not Naren's undergraduate learning experience. See, that is exactly the lesson that I want to deliver to all of you today. Wait for the right time and wait until you hear the entire story and never miss any finer details of it. The moment you miss it, the moment you rush to have an answer to sort out that ambiguity, the richness of that story is gone.